All right, so before Pier Ave, there was the Chris Project,
Mm-hmm.
and me. It was just me and Chris at first, then Mike Camille. But when it was me and Chris, we would go and busk anywhere we could, and we did also try busking in Boston, but without amplification. And so busking would be fine, streets of Rockport, streets of Gloucester, but in Boston, it's just like so noisy. And so um, we would just be basically playing to noise, and people would walk by and not even like look at us. I remember making a sign that said, "We'll play music for burritos," but I spelled burritos with an O instead of a U.
Burritos,
Burritos.
which are expensive, by the way.
Yeah, yeah. And then even one time, actually, speaking of being drowned out, there was a restaurant that this was in Rockport. I won't say which restaurant, but
They're probably out of business.
they played. It was a Wednesday. We were doing pretty good. We had like a decent amount of people listening and checking us out. And this restaurant started blasting. You know that Hump Day commercial? Mike, 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 it's Hump Day.
Yeah.
And the camel. They blasted that commercial because it was Wednesday, and I guess they do like a Hump Day, like music day, and started. This is out into the street, blasting music, like EDM and stuff. I don't really know.
Were they
It's like
doing
their
it
thing.
to make you go away?
No, but it felt that way.
Yeah.
And people on the street were like, "We kind of liked what you were doing."
Yeah.
But anyways, so we learned the hard lessons of like, if you're in a noisy place, you need to amp yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what we're talking today about on Earth Tones episode 23, the signal to noise ratio. This is Earth Tones episode 23. And I'm here joined today with my good friend and artistic collaborator, Mr. Michael Lamarche. And that band that was the Two of You Busking evolved from the Two of You Busking into the Chris Project, and that's when I got involved, and then we became ultimately Pier Ave. And you can check out our album Conquer, and there's a couple other singles since then too. Mm-hmm. But Conquer you can stream on Spotify. We had a great amount of fun making that music together. So, for the Earth Sound, this one comes from our friend Jared. That sounds like something out of Stranger Things. That is Jared Pasek sending in a VHF radio noise that seems to fit perfectly with our theme this week of the signal to noise ratio. So that's what we're talking about this week. And Mike and I this afternoon were doing some reading, and I invited him here to be a part of the Earth Tones episode 23. And while Mike was reading this magazine, he picked out a story for our bit of old news. This is from a Jimi Hendrix Ultimate Music Guide, and it tells a little bit of the story of when Axis Bold as Love was about to be released. There's actually a wonderful picture of Jimi Hendrix holding the Axis album while dressed up like Santa Claus, which is pretty great too. So this says, under the terms of his 2 albums a year contract with Track Records, Hendrix had no choice but to unveil Axis Bold as Love in such a highly competitive season. He even added to the pressure by accidentally leaving a master tape in the back of a taxi, a potential disaster only averted when Hendrix, producer Chandler, and engineer Eddie Kramer spent a night in the studio constructing a 21-minute remix of the album's entire first side. Some of his less talented guitar contemporaries, hearing about this, must have quietly wished that Hendrix had lost all the masters and been unable to salvage a note. I don't know about that. Can you imagine a contemporary of Jimi Hendrix wishing ill upon him because he was too good of a guitar player?
No.
I don't know. I've heard of people freaking out, like Eric Clapton and Pete Townsend, and being afraid for how good he was, but I've never heard of anybody saying...
Probably just excited to have the record themselves.
Yeah.
Check it out.
So that, though, is a great little bit of old news. Jimi Hendrix loses the first official mixes for Axis Bold as Love, Side 1 in a Taxi Cab. And we were talking about, can you imagine that tape is out there somewhere? Unless the guy with the cab just went back to the distro place and threw it out. Maybe somebody snagged that. Maybe it's in some collection. Somebody has the original mixes of Axis Bold as Love that Hendrix left in a Taxi Cab. All right, for our main discussion of signal to noise, here's the prompt. The signal to noise ratio is a measurement of the strength of desired signal compared to background noise. When recording, this can mean how clear the instrument you're recording sounds compared to the background hiss and hum of the electronics. As digital systems have evolved, we've seen a tremendous revolution in improving signal to noise ratios. With today's technology, our noise floors are extremely low. There's less hiss than ever before. And still, in some ways, we find ourselves in a noisier environment than ever before. We are bombarded with different types of noise. Screens everywhere, social media, everything designed to consume our attention. How do you hear your signal of inspiration and follow it, separate it from the background noise of modern life? What do you think, Mike? How do you do such a thing?
I think it's getting harder. I mean, I think it makes me think about how it seems like, from where I sit anyway, it's harder to witness or consume art that's like really, really thoughtful, and like something that maybe took a lot of time, and meditation, because of the pace of the world. And I think, like, you know how we talk about like AI will eventually regurgitate its own information?
Mm-hmm.
I do think that actually that is happening to us too, because I think we've always taken inspiration from artists of the past, but if that wheel is going really fast and you don't like take a moment to find what signal you're really trying to put through the noise, like I think that actually it can become like derivative but not thoughtful, if that makes sense.
There's so many streams to be able to study, and that's one of the challenges for me. Like, to feel you want to be inspired by the past masters, but there's so many. And I think you and I, we've come from like a non-tradition tradition. In other words, like, we've been influenced by so many different things. We didn't come from like the apprentice master relationship where we were learning this style specifically, and that there's a long lineage of that style. So how do you decide what is like the type of thing to follow for a long time, instead of bouncing around to different things that influence you? How do you decide something is worth studying and amplifying in your own artistic world and like work?
I think you first of all probably have to be extremely inspired by it to then sit with it for such a long time. And I think, I don't know, I think like it's not a problem to be derivative in the first place. I think that's only it can be a positive, right?
Sure.
But it's sort of how you recreate what you've seen in your own unique way.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure I'm really answering your question, but I think that what happens is if you kind of release too quick, like it is just a copy without your unique element. If you haven't had enough time to really like meditate with it.
That's the challenge, because if you have inspiration come from so many different places, then you might not be absorbing them enough to like innovate within them.
Right.
So for the last couple of years, I've been thinking like, which threads are the ones that mean the most to me, like you said, that I'm most inspired by, that I should continue to pull. And I think we've done that really earnestly with reggae by having said, we like reggae, we are inspired to make reggae. Let's do as deep of a dive and pay respect to this music as much as we can. Of course, we know people who've dedicated their whole lives to it, and we spent, a lot of our adult life, which has only been, 15, 20 years. But I think that we resonated with Jamaican music from like the 70s and said, let's totally check out that as thoroughly as we can. And I think similarly, I've been inspired by people like Jimi Hendrix. And I think about, those threads to pull. The challenge is when we're inspired by artists who themselves were inspired by so many different things too, that's also tricky because we're tapping into the family tree of music when it's already evolved. Like Jimi Hendrix, sure, it's 60 years ago, but it's also like the sum of the peak of electric guitar at the time, blues, rock and roll, R&B, soul. He played with Little Richard. He played with Curtis Knight doing all sorts of R&B and soul. He had so many influences in just his own music that I feel like we're living in this future time where I guess what I'm getting is you try to hear like what is the signal through all of that, like the through line.
Sure.
And I was thinking about this recently, like how inspired are you by artists like a Michelangelo or a Da Vinci who are like the famously accomplished masters?
Obviously when I see their work, it's inspiring. But I think, I'm probably, what I'm saying is actually the lesson I need the most, right? It's because I can easily be like, oh, this contemporary piece is so cool. I want to make something like this too, without actually knowing where they came from.
Sure.
So, but I would say if I look at those works, it's going to be massively inspired.
Yeah, something about it is like you look at it and it's humbling just in the amount of time it would take.
Oh, yeah.
You look at it like, wow, that guy did nothing but that.
Right.
For a long time.
Yeah, and I think that's why this signal through the noise, it almost becomes like it's like expert level challenge, right?
Right.
In today's world where it's like, people have side hustles and side hustles just to get by. So how do you make your creative work right now?
Yeah, I think it's easy to get into things these days too, because YouTube or anything can get you started, and then to follow something for a long time is pretty hard because for every Marty Music channel that's showing you how to play that song you wanted to learn, there's the Mr. Beast recommended video right next to it, and there's the political discourse right next to that. And there's everything that it's trying to get you to just keep clicking. And it's their incentive to keep you watching videos, not to help you improve at a skill, And the other day, I was really inspired thinking about like Ennio Morricone, and I want to work on this new Roji music. And I want it to be kind of like orchestral and inspired by like the Western movie soundtracks more than before. Like there's the guitar sound that inspired the Roji music, but I also wanted to have a bit of like the strings and things that were about like those old Western movies. So I was thinking, I can start to get into it if I just think of some themes and I start to use some like sample libraries of violins and things. So I came up with an idea that I kind of heard in my head, and I thought, well, I'll write it down on paper first, and that'll keep me kind of in the music and in my imagination. I had written like a couple of the theme ideas, and I thought I'll open up Logic and I'll work on seeing if I can hear it, and start to work on the actual piece of music. As soon as I started to put the theme into Logic, all of like the inspiration and the pure like music part of it, all just kind of like froze.
Oh, wow.
And so it's not that I wasn't still enjoying it. It's the fact that I was then thinking about, this bass sound isn't exactly the one I hear in my head. Now I'm tweaking the plugins. This quantization of my notes wasn't right. and in my head it has a little bit more swing to it, and this kind of snapped it to the grid, and now actually it was a measure of 3 that time, and it's this, that, and the other thing, and I found myself like stopped in my tracks creatively, whereas when it was all just the imagination, I was like, I can hear the music in my head, and it's really cool. And as soon as I went to the computer was just like, no, that we're making something that doesn't live up to your imagination. So I think that we have to kind of be aware of these things going on. Like, I know that you draw a lot and then work on something in the computer. So how important to you is like following the inspiration of a design on paper before you bring it into a Photoshop type of thing?
I think I feel like if I go straight into Photoshop, but yeah, like with maybe a similar but different example being like, all of a sudden I'm working on something completely different that is more like about angles and math than it is about the original drawing or the idea in my head. And yeah, which is, it's kind of funny because you made me think about the fact that like right now you can make something very fast with modern technology, right? And yet that same technology, which should have been mostly a conduit to like a final piece for you, actually kind of got in the way. Yeah. So sometimes, yeah, it's absolutely helpful. Sometimes it's like I kind of dream of like not having any distraction except for like a physical piece of paper.
And the AI thing that is sort of looming over our heads at all times, to me, it feels sort of like categorically part of the noise as well. Because here I've got a theme, and I can play it on the guitar, and I could take that voice memo, and I could submit it to the AI, and I could say, here's my theme. I'm working on an Ennio Morricone-inspired Western soundtrack that is a blend with reggae and blah, blah, blah. And it would make it. But it wouldn't be the thing that I'm trying to make. It would be something that I described, and it would be its best guess at it. And I think like that's cool, and it's obviously interesting and whatever. But the challenge becomes, if you do that, can you ever unhear what it did? Just like if you drew something and then you let DALL-E make it for you, can you ever unsee its treatment of what you did with it?
And I don't think so. And I think because it's like when you have a dream and you hear a song and then you wake up and you try to make it. Right. That dream may have had elements of that you can't find in the waking world. Yeah. Same with AI. It'll never know what it's like to be a human. It has a feeling that you want to translate. Right. And that is art. So like, if you're trying to lean on AI or technology to like translate that feeling, you're dehumanizing it. You're taking it away from the human experience. Yeah. And so yeah, to answer the question, I feel like I'd lose it forever, right? It's so easy to lose that feeling. Right. And that's why it's so precious. That's exactly the signal. That's right.
Yeah. And it can be frustrating. I know I saw a quote, David Foster Wallace, who, unfortunately, took his own life. He said that it's, so painful and frustrating to know the difference between what you were envisioning and what you ended up making. Now, you take it with a grain of salt because he ultimately killed himself, right? So we want to be a little more optimistic than that and to see it as like, well, that's life. That's what art is. Like, I don't want to just accept that that's the tragedy of it, that you can't possibly have the signal come into the real world. But I do think that it's interesting that I bet if you survey most artists, I think there was a jazz musician where I don't remember which one it was, so I'm not even gonna guess. But they said something to him like, "Man, what you played tonight was amazing." And he was like, "If you like that, you should have heard what I was trying to play." Yeah. And that can kind of be true, that we have an inspiration that we want to bring into the world, and it can be very frustrating to have it not live up to what we imagined it to be before we started to make it and have it show up.
Sort of reminds me though of that sentiment that it's about the journey is that, like, I know it's a cliche, but it's sort of like, yes, artists should try to share the signal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the processing of what you've just felt and trying to translate it to the world around you, whether it's just your friends or a larger audience, I think that is how humans grow creatively and in other areas of the world. So like I think the trying is the thing.
Right.
The taking the ride. You feel it, the signal, you feel the feeling, and you're like, I'm gonna take this ride.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the most beautiful things a human could do.
Yeah, I agree. It's what's relatable too, because you can hear that somebody is working through the process. And I think for me, that's what makes me not too worried about AI most of the time,
Mm-hmm.
because what we're listening for in music is the humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And so I see these ads where they're like, look, I made this crazy song with AI. And I'm like, okay. You know?
Yeah.
All right. I mean, but if anybody can do it, then we're going to have heard a million songs like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to be like, the last thing I want to listen to are all those songs that it's just like when we see the AI posts, you know, Facebook, just if you go on Facebook, it's just AI things. And when anybody's got this like 8-paragraph long thing, I look at it and I'm like, that's AI. You know, like, and I stop reading because as soon as I hit like see more and it's like long and formatted and this whole, you know, convoluted way, I'm like, forget it. I don't even care anymore about what that says because I can recognize it as the rhythm of AI, so I'm not going to read it. You know, whereas if somebody's got this wicked typo infested, like, I just got to tell you this, man, this pickup is terrible.
Yeah,
I'm like, let me read that.
Yeah,
because that's got humanity written all over it. You know. Cool, man. Well, I think that we arrived at an interesting thing. I believe the signal is what we're inspired by in the first place. And if we can tune into that and we can follow it and we can pull the thread of what that inspiration is, then even if you don't ultimately bring it to fruition in what you're imagining, you're at least following a real inspiration. And I do think that that connects to a spiritual path and all sorts of other things we could talk about another time too, because I heard Terrence McKenna the other day. I listen to him all the time, and he said, forget enlightenment, I would settle for just a little peace of mind.
That's great. Yeah.
I was like, yeah, man, that's true. A lot of us, that's what we need. All right, so for a musical demonstration, I was thinking about focusing on an idea that speaks to you and tuning out all the stock licks and tricks. So imagine if I've got something like this. There might be something if I just listen. And if I had just picked up the guitar and said, I'm going to come up with something fingers first, I would have played instead. And that's cool, maybe because it's inspired by what I played before, but the little melody, I heard it in my head. Now I don't remember the second half.
Something like that.
Yeah, it's something like that. But I think that there is value in listening to your inner ear. And if you have a chance to do that, it's a hard skill to develop over time, but you can start with something really simple like a single string. If I go, and I've got my major scale there, you can start to just hear, and your ear will start to tell you, okay, well, I just went do, re, mi, re, do. So maybe I could go do, re, mi, fa, sol. You know what I mean? And you listen to what's in your ear, and that informs what you play on the instrument, and vice versa. So I think to follow the signal, you also have to be able to break out of the muscle memory of just trying to run licks, you know? And usually the signal doesn't come in the form of, you know, which is cool, but it's just like, it's just rote, just my hand just going and doing something. So what's on the turntable this week? Mike and I were just listening to this record. This might have been my mom's. I've got a bunch of my mom's records. This is the door. Oh, nope. It says Sheila Ryan. So either my mother stole it from Sheila Ryan or I bought this at some store along the way. Sheila, thanks for buying this in 1971. This is The Doors' L.A. Woman. It was released April 19th, 1971, and Jim Morrison would pass away July 3rd of the same year, so only a few months before the passing of Mr. Jim Morrison. Something that helped me this week, I thought about this idea, annoyed for now. I get cut off in traffic all the time, all sorts of it. Somebody didn't hold the door for me today. No, I held the door for them, and they didn't say thank you.
2 people, right?
2 people. Neither of them said thank you. And I think about this idea, annoyed for now. It's like, okay, I'm going to feel annoyed, but it's just going to be for right now. And that can come through the creative process too. Man, I can't believe that I broke a string and that whole take is ruined. Instead of doom and gloom about it, you can just say, I'm annoyed for now. And that both gives me permission to feel annoyed and acknowledges that I probably won't in a few minutes. So that was helpful for me this week, thinking about the idea of annoyed for now. Thank you so much, Mike, for being on the podcast. This is Michael Lamarche, my longtime collaborator. This is Earth Tones, episode 23. Thank you for tuning in. You can visit jakepardee.com for more information about me and my music, and maritimerecording.com for more information about you and your music. And I'm here to always remind you that we are a fantastically musical species on a delightfully musical planet, and so says Nesh as well. Nesh and BC Chomp. I don't know if you watch the video form of the podcast, but our friends here wish you a very happy new year as well.
Oh, yes. Happy New Year.
All right. We will see you next time for episode 24. Thanks for tuning in.